Marcus Webb sat in his cramped maintenance office, reviewing diagnostic logs, and trying not to think about how synthesized coffee from recycled station water never quite tasted right. The small space was organized chaos. Repair equipment sorted by function rather than manufacturer, diagnostic tablets stacked according to urgency, a wall display showing active maintenance requests across the Thyran Royal District. He'd been on the Thyran homeworld for 8 months now. Contract technical work that paid decently enough and kept him far from the corporate politics of Earth-based tech firms where he'd spent too many years dealing with office drama instead of actually fixing things. The Thyrans were impressive, tall species with angular features and skin that shifted through subtle metallic sheens depending on bloodline and status. Their society ran on intricate honor codes and hierarchical structures that Marcus had learned to navigate carefully without ever fully understanding. His job was simple: fix things. Communication arrays, environmental systems, personal devices, whatever needed repair in the sprawling royal district that housed the aristocracy and their support infrastructure. He was good at it, stayed mostly invisible to the aristocrats who considered technical work beneath their notice, and collected his pay without complications. His comm terminal chimed, not the usual maintenance request tone, but something sharper, more urgent. Priority routing he'd never seen before. Marcus pulled up the message, his stomach sinking as he read it. Royal hangar, Queen's personal device malfunction, immediate attendance required. Authentication, Royal Security 7 Alpha. He stared at the screen for a long moment, his mind already cataloging problems with this situation. He'd worked on royal district systems before: environmental controls, secondary communication arrays, standard maintenance, but never anything connected directly to the Queen herself. The Thyran royal family didn't typically trust human technicians with personal equipment. There were security concerns, cultural protocols, layers of approval that normally took days or weeks to process. But the message was authenticated with royal security codes he recognized from system briefings, and the priority level suggested genuine emergency rather than administrative error. Marcus grabbed his toolkit, a carefully organized collection of diagnostic equipment and repair tools refined over years of fieldwork, and headed out of his office toward the royal hangar section. The hangar complex was massive, designed to house the royal family's personal transport vessels and their associated support systems. Marcus had only been in this section once before, during initial orientation when he'd first arrived on-world. 2 Thyran guards intercepted him at the security checkpoint. Their expressions suggested they were deeply uncomfortable with a human's presence here, but were following orders they couldn't question. Marcus Webb, civilian technician. I received a priority request. Confirmed, you are expected. The guard's tone was clipped, professional, giving away nothing. Follow precisely. Do not deviate from the designated path. Do not approach any systems, except the one you are summoned to repair. Understood. They escorted him through corridors that were simultaneously functional and elegant. Thyran architecture blended utility with aesthetic in ways human design rarely managed. The hangar itself was enormous, with multiple transport vessels in various states of maintenance, support staff moving with practiced efficiency. And near one of the sleek royal transports, surrounded by advisors speaking in low, urgent tones, stood Queen Serath herself. Marcus had seen her in broadcast addresses and official recordings, but never in person. She was tall even by Thyran standards, with the deep silver skin tone that marked the highest bloodlines and angular features that conveyed authority even in casual posture. Her back was turned as she spoke with an elderly advisor whose copper-toned skin indicated military or security background. But Marcus could hear the tension in her voice, the controlled frustration of someone dealing with a problem that shouldn't have occurred. Your Majesty, one of Marcus's escorts spoke quietly. The human technician has arrived. Queen Serath turned, her silver eyes sweeping over Marcus with an assessment that felt simultaneously casual and comprehensive. She said nothing, simply nodded once, then returned to her conversation. The elderly advisor approached Marcus, his expression making clear he considered this entire situation deeply inappropriate. You are the technician, human. Yes, sir, Marcus Webb. I received the priority request regarding a device malfunction. Her Majesty's personal device has experienced critical malfunction during a security protocol update. The advisor's tone made each word precise, as if speaking to someone of questionable competence. Our royal technicians are currently occupied with the primary communication arrays. A coordinated attack disabled multiple systems simultaneously across the district. You were the nearest qualified technician available when the malfunction occurred. Marcus absorbed this, his mind already shifting into diagnostic mode. What are the symptoms? Erratic power regulation, corrupted data pathways, failure to properly interface with biological systems. The device is currently non-functional and potentially compromised. The advisor gestured toward a diagnostic table where a palm-sized crystalline construct sat, its normally smooth surface flickering with irregular light patterns. We require discretion and speed. Can you repair it? Marcus approached the table, pulling out his handheld scanner and running preliminary diagnostics. The device was sophisticated, quantum-encrypted storage, biological interface components designed to respond to Thyran neural chemistry, fail-safes that would protect the user even during catastrophic malfunction. The readouts confirmed what the advisor had described. A security update had failed mid-installation, triggering a cascade that corrupted the interface protocols. It was complex but not impossible to repair. The cascade can be reversed, Marcus said, his professional assessment overriding his nervousness about whose device this was. The core systems appear intact. I'll need approximately 90 minutes, possibly longer if the damage extends deeper than surface diagnostics indicate. You have 1 hour. Her Majesty requires functionality restored before the evening council session. The advisor's tone suggested this timeline was not negotiable. I'll work as quickly as safety permits. See that you do. The advisor departed, leaving Marcus alone with the device, the guards, and the acute awareness that Queen Serath herself was less than 20 meters away. He began work with the methodical care that had kept him employed despite being human in spaces that often preferred their own kind. First, isolating the cascade to prevent further system degradation. Then, carefully mapping the corrupted pathways, identifying which could be restored from backup systems and which would need to be rebuilt manually. The device was elegant engineering, far more sophisticated than human-equivalent technology, integrating biological and quantum systems in ways that Earth's best labs were still trying to replicate. But the fundamental principles were universal. Damaged pathways needed repair, corrupted data needed restoration, fail-safes needed careful bypass during reconstruction. Marcus lost himself in the work, his awareness narrowing to the device and the delicate process of restoring its functionality without triggering additional cascades or compromising its security systems. He was 40 minutes in when he realized the Queen had dismissed her advisors. The realization came gradually, the background voices had stopped, the sense of multiple presences had diminished. Marcus glanced up from his work and found Queen Serath standing perhaps 10 meters away, watching him with focused attention. The guards had repositioned themselves subtly, still maintaining security perimeter, still alert, but with their attention deliberately directed outward toward the hangar's entrances rather than toward the Queen herself. Marcus tried to ignore the observation and focus on the repair. He was in the most delicate phase, reintegrating the security protocols without triggering another cascade, rebuilding the interface pathways that allowed the device to safely connect with its users' neural patterns. Another 30 minutes of careful work, testing each restored system layer before proceeding to the next, monitoring power regulation and data integrity with equipment that wasn't designed for Thyran technology, but which he'd learned to adapt. Finally, the device's surface stopped its erratic flickering. The light patterns stabilized into the smooth glow that indicated proper baseline function. Marcus ran comprehensive diagnostics, power regulation stable, data pathways intact, interface protocols responding correctly to test signals. Everything showed green. The repair was complete. He looked up to inform whoever was coordinating this operation. Queen Serath was standing directly beside the diagnostic table, not 10 meters away, not across the hangar maintaining appropriate distance. She was beside the table, close enough that Marcus could see the subtle patterns in her metallic skin tone, close enough that her presence felt overwhelming in ways that had nothing to do with physical space. "It is repaired." Her voice was controlled, carrying authority that seemed innate rather than performed. Up close, her silver eyes were striking, vertical pupils that marked Thyran biology, but the intelligence and assessment in them was universal. "Yes, Your Majesty." Marcus kept his tone professional despite his racing heart. "All systems restored, security protocols reintegrated without compromise. The device should function normally." He gestured to the diagnostic display. "I recommend a graduated restart rather than immediate full activation. Allow the systems to verify their own integrity before engaging the biological interface. You understand the architecture well. This is not typical human expertise. I've been studying Thyran technology since arriving on world. The principles are different from human engineering, but not incomprehensible once you understand the foundational logic." Marcus risked a brief glance at her face. She was studying him with an intensity that made him deeply uncomfortable, though he couldn't articulate exactly why. "May I activate the restart sequence, Your Majesty?" "Proceed." She didn't step back, didn't create the distance that protocol would normally demand between Thyran royalty and service workers of any species. Marcus activated the graduated restart, watching as each system layer came online sequentially, verified its integrity, integrated with the next layer. It was textbook perfect. No errors, no hesitation, smooth progression through the entire activation sequence until the device pulsed with steady light indicating readiness for biological interface. "Complete, Your Majesty. The device is ready for your use." Marcus stepped back slightly, professionally, creating the space that she hadn't. That's when he noticed the guards had turned away entirely, not abandoning their posts, but with their backs deliberately toward the Queen and Marcus, their attention focused outward on the hangar's perimeter with an intensity that suggested this was intentional positioning rather than security necessity. And Marcus realized, with slowly building concern, that something about this situation wasn't following the protocols he'd learned. Queen Serath picked up her device, her movements precise and controlled. She activated it with a gesture, the crystalline surface responding immediately to her neural interface, displaying information in holographic patterns that Marcus's human eyes could barely process. The data streams moved too fast, the color spectrum extended beyond his vision, the information architecture was fundamentally alien. Functionality is perfect. She deactivated the device, turning her full attention to Marcus. "You have considerable skill." "Thank you, Your Majesty." "What is your name?" The question seemed strange. Surely she'd been briefed on who was being summoned to repair her personal device. But Marcus answered. "Marcus Webb, Your Majesty." "And you have been on our world for 8 months, Your Majesty." "Long enough to understand our customs." The question carried weight that Marcus didn't fully grasp, but he answered honestly. "I've studied them, Your Majesty. I try to respect protocols and avoid giving offense. But I'm certain there are nuances I still don't understand. Yet you did not step back when I approached during your work. You remained focused on the repair, even with me standing close enough to observe each movement." Her silver eyes held his, and Marcus realized this was some kind of test or evaluation he didn't understand. "I was focused on not damaging your device, Your Majesty. The work required precision, and the reintegration phase is delicate. I couldn't allow distractions. And now that the work is complete." Marcus glanced at the guards, still facing away, still deliberately not watching this interaction. I'm uncertain of proper protocol, Your Majesty. I wasn't briefed on appropriate behavior after completing work in your direct presence." "That is honest." She studied him for a moment longer, then spoke in formal Thyran, a phrase that Marcus's translator implant rendered as service rendered in proximity, trust demonstrated through completion, favor recognized by witnesses. The guards responded in perfect unison, still without turning. "Witnessed and recognized." Queen Serath switched back to standard. "Do you understand what has occurred here, Marcus Webb? I repaired your device, Your Majesty. You repaired my personal device, while I stood close enough to interfere had I chosen to. Close enough to observe every action, every decision, every movement. Close enough that anyone with malicious intent could have caused harm rather than provided service." Her expression was difficult for Marcus to read, not anger, not satisfaction, something more complex. And you focused entirely on completing the work with precision and care, never faltering, never allowing my proximity to compromise your attention. She paused, letting that settle. In our culture, such proximity during service creates obligation. When a member of the royal family grants such closeness during technical or personal work, it is considered a test of character. I permitted it. You completed the work without faltering, without attempting to leverage the situation, without letting status interfere with duty. The guards witnessed your focus and my trust. This creates what we call keth'aran, a bond of recognized service. Marcus's stomach dropped. A bond, Your Majesty. You are now considered part of the inner royal household, not as servant in the traditional sense, but as one who has demonstrated trustworthiness in proximity to the throne. This grants you certain protections and obligations. She picked up the device again, testing its functions with practiced ease. It also means you cannot easily be dismissed or sent away. Your service has been recognized before witnesses, and that recognition binds us both by custom and honor. I didn't know. Of course you didn't. You are human. Our customs are not yours, and there was no malicious intent in my granting proximity, only necessity, and I admit, curiosity about how you would respond. Her tone wasn't apologetic exactly, but it carried acknowledgement. But ignorance does not negate the bond once recognized and witnessed. Marcus tried to process this. What does that mean practically, Your Majesty? It means you will be reassigned from general maintenance to royal technical services. Your quarters will be moved to the palace district proper. Your compensation will be adjusted to reflect your new position and the trust placed in you. She spoke as if these were routine administrative matters. You will be responsible for maintaining my personal systems and devices, as well as other sensitive technical work within the royal household. Your Majesty, I'm just a technician. I'm not qualified for. You are a technician who completed delicate work, while I watched, without hesitation or error, focused entirely on service rather than status or opportunity. Her tone was firm now, brooking no argument. That is precisely the kind of character I value in those who serve close to the throne. The bond is witnessed and recognized by the guards, recorded by protocol. Acceptance is not optional. She paused, her expression softening slightly. But I will tell you this, Marcus Webb. It is meant as honor, not punishment. You have demonstrated a quality that is rare in any species, the ability to focus on duty even under observation by power. That has value. The constraints of the bond are real, but so are the protections and opportunities it provides. The elderly advisor reappeared at the hangar entrance, taking in the scene with one comprehensive glance. The Queen standing close to the human technician, the guards deliberately facing away, the device clearly functional in her hands. His expression shifted through several emotions too quickly for Marcus to identify, but concern was definitely prominent. Your Majesty, the repair is complete. Marcus Webb will be transferred to Royal Household Services effective immediately. Arrange appropriate quarters and credentials. Ensure the transition is handled with proper discretion. The advisor bowed deeply, though his body language suggested profound discomfort. Yes, Your Majesty. Shall I escort the technician to? I will speak with him further. You may prepare the arrangements. It was dismissal, politely phrased but absolute. The advisor departed, though not before casting one more evaluative look at Marcus that suggested future difficulties. When they were relatively alone, the guards still present but still deliberately not watching, Queen Serath spoke more quietly. This was not planned in the sense of deliberate manipulation, Marcus Webb. The device malfunction was genuine. The coordinated attack on our systems was real and required immediate response from our royal technicians. Your assignment here was circumstantial. You were the qualified person available when urgency demanded action. She held up the repaired device. But the way you worked, focused, precise, unbothered by my observation, that demonstrated something valuable. I could have maintained distance. I chose not to, because I wanted to see how you would respond to proximity during service. You responded exactly as one hopes, with complete focus on duty and quality of work. I was just doing my job, Your Majesty. You were doing it well, in circumstances designed to test whether you could maintain that focus under conditions that make many people falter. She tested the device one more time, apparently satisfied. That has value in a court where loyalty is performed but not always genuine, where proximity to power creates temptation, where trust is difficult to establish and easy to betray. Marcus struggled to find appropriate response. He settled on honest question, "May I ask something, Your Majesty?" "You may." "Could I have refused this bond? If I had understood the customs, could I have stepped back when you approached? Could I have declined the situation?" "No." Her answer was direct, without hesitation. "Once I chose to observe you in proximity during service, the situation was established by my action, not yours. Your only choices were to falter in the work, which would have resulted in your immediate dismissal and likely removal from Royal District employment, or to complete it successfully. You completed it. That outcome carries its own obligations under our customs." She met his eyes directly. "If you're asking whether you've been trapped by ignorance of our customs and by circumstance beyond your control, the answer is yes. But every culture has customs that bind, Marcus Webb. You will learn ours, as you have already begun to. And you will find that the benefits of the bond exceed the constraints if you serve with the same integrity you demonstrated today." "I understand, Your Majesty." Marcus wasn't sure he did understand, not fully, but arguing seemed pointless. "Tomorrow, you will meet with household administration to formalize your new position. Tonight, return to your current quarters and prepare for transition. We will speak again once you are settled." It was dismissal, and Marcus recognized it. He bowed, the formal gesture he'd learned during orientation, and departed with one of the guards escorting him back through the royal hangar complex. As they walked, Marcus's mind churned through everything that had happened. He'd been summoned for emergency repair work. He'd completed it successfully while the Queen herself observed closely. And somehow that had invoked ancient customs that bound him to royal service permanently. Was it manipulation? An elaborate setup to trap a competent technician into indentured service? Or genuine cultural practice that he genuinely stumbled into through circumstance and his own competence? He didn't know. Probably couldn't know without years more experience with Thyran culture. But one thing was clear. His quiet, anonymous existence as a contract technician had ended the moment. Marcus returned to his small maintenance office in a daze, his mind still processing everything that had happened in the royal hangar. The repair had been completed. The Queen's device was functional. And somehow, he'd been bound to royal household service by ancient customs he'd never been warned about. His comm terminal was already chiming with incoming messages when he arrived. He sat at his desk and pulled them up, finding a cascade of administrative notifications. Transfer orders, housing reassignment to Palace District. Instructions to report to Royal Household Administration the following morning. Compensation adjustment notifications showing numbers that made his previous salary look like an afterthought. Security clearance updates granting him access to areas he'd never been permitted near before. It was all happening with bureaucratic efficiency, as if binding a human technician to royal service was routine rather than unprecedented. Marcus stared at the messages for a long moment, then pulled up everything he could find about Thyran customs regarding proximity and service. His previous research had covered basic protocols, appropriate distance from royalty, formal address requirements, behavioral expectations in various contexts. But nothing had mentioned this specific situation. Service rendered while being observed closely by royalty, the concept of keth'aran bonds, the permanence of recognized service. He found references eventually, buried in anthropological studies and cultural analyses written by Thyran scholars. The custom was ancient, predating the current governmental structure, rooted in tribal traditions where proximity to leaders during critical moments created bonds of mutual obligation. The modern application was rare. Thyran royal families had professional staff and elaborate protocols that prevented most situations where such proximity would occur. But the custom remained valid, recognized in cultural law, binding when properly witnessed. Marcus had been tested, evaluated, and he'd passed without knowing he was being assessed. Another message arrived, this one from an unknown sender, text only, no identification. You are not the first to be bound this way, though you are the first human. The bond of proximity service is ancient and cannot be undone except by death or formal release that will never be granted. But it need not be burden. Serve well, learn quickly, and you may find the position offers more than you anticipated. You have attracted royal attention through competence and integrity. Use that attention wisely. Marcus stared at the message, trying to determine if it was threat, advice, or warning. Probably all three. Someone in the royal household was watching the situation, offering guidance in a way that suggested both experience with court politics and concern about how the human would navigate his new position. He spent the rest of the evening packing his belongings. The accumulation of 8 months on an alien world fit into 3 storage containers, which said something about his minimalist approach to long-term contract work. The next morning, he reported to Royal Household Administration as instructed. The office was located in the palace complex proper, far more elaborate than anything in the maintenance districts where he'd spent his previous time on world. A Thyran administrator, middle-aged, with the bronze skin tone that indicated bureaucratic rather than military service, greeted him with an expression that suggested profound uncertainty about how to handle this situation. Marcus Webb, human technician, recently recognized for service to Her Majesty. That's my understanding, yes. This is an unprecedented situation. We have protocols for Thyran citizens entering royal service through keth'aran bonds, but adapting those protocols for a human requires consultation. The administrator pulled up multiple displays showing forms and requirements that apparently needed modification. Your previous contract employment is terminated by default. The bond supersedes contractual arrangements. Your new position is classified as inner household technical services, with direct responsibility to Her Majesty for sensitive systems maintenance. What does that mean day to day? You will maintain the Queen's personal devices and systems. You will be consulted on technical matters affecting royal household operations. You will have access to secured areas as needed for your work, with appropriate supervision until your reliability is fully established. The administrator's tone made clear they considered that supervision critically important. You will also be expected to attend certain court functions where your presence as recognized bonded servant is appropriate. Marcus absorbed this. How often? That depends on Her Majesty's schedule and requirements, but you should prepare for regular visibility within the court. Your status as the first human-granted keth'aran bond is significant. It will be noticed, discussed, evaluated. The bureaucratic processing took hours. Forms adapted for human biology, security protocols adjusted for his new clearances, housing assignment finalized, compensation structure explained in detail that made Marcus realize he was now earning more in a month than he'd previously made in a quarter. By afternoon, he was standing in his new quarters. A suite in the palace district that was modest by royal standards but felt absurdly luxurious compared to his previous housing. Private bedroom, work area with technical equipment already installed, living space with furnishings that had been modified for human ergonomics. His toolkit had been transferred, along with several crates of equipment he'd requisitioned months ago for general maintenance work. Everything was organized, placed with care that suggested someone had taken time to understand how he preferred his workspace arranged. He was examining the technical station when there was a chime at the door. Marcus opened it to find one of the guards from the hangar, tall, with the deep copper skin tone of long military service and eyes that suggested he missed very little. Marcus Webb. I am Kethai's senior guard to Her Majesty's personal security detail. I witnessed the bond recognition yesterday. I remember you were one of the guards who turned away. By protocol, yes. When proximity service reaches the recognition phase, witnesses must demonstrate they observed the service completion, but did not observe inappropriate intimacy. We face away to show respect for the bond being formed. Kethai's tone was formal, but not unfriendly. I came to provide guidance you may not receive from administrative channels. I'd appreciate that. The bond you now share with Her Majesty is permanent barring death or formal release. Release will not be granted. The custom does not permit it once properly witnessed. You are bound to royal service for as long as you live or as long as she rules. Kethais spoke matter-of-factly, as if discussing routine procedures. This constrains your autonomy significantly. You cannot leave the homeworld without royal permission. You cannot refuse duties assigned by Her Majesty. You cannot transfer your service to others. I understood that much, but you should also understand the protections. No one can harm you without answering directly to the Queen. Your status places you under royal authority, which means anyone attempting violence or coercion against you commits offense against the throne itself. Keth'aran paused. You also have certain privileges. Your counsel will be valued on matters within your expertise. You may speak more freely than most in the Queen's presence. The bond assumes you have already demonstrated trustworthiness. Marcus nodded, processing this. Was I the only one tested? The only one recently, and the first human ever. But the custom of proximity service testing is known. It allows the royal family to identify those truly focused on service rather than status. Keth'aran's expression suggested approval. Her Majesty chose to observe you closely during critical repair work. That choice created the condition for testing. Your response, maintaining complete focus on the work despite her proximity, demonstrated the character she values. I didn't know I was being tested. That is the point. A test known in advance is performance, not genuine demonstration of character. Keth'aran moved to the window, looking out over the palace complex. You should understand something about Her Majesty. She values competence above almost all other qualities. She recognized your technical skill months ago through reports from maintenance supervisors. When the emergency arose and proximity service testing became possible, she took the opportunity to assess whether that competence was accompanied by integrity. And I passed. You passed. Now you must continue to pass, every day, in work and behavior and navigation of court politics that will test you in different ways. Keth'aran turned back to Marcus. Some in the court view your elevation with suspicion. An outsider, a human, granted unprecedented access to the Queen and royal systems. Others view it with curiosity, wondering what you represent. A few view it with approval, believing that recognizing competence, regardless of species origin, demonstrates wise leadership. What do you think? I think Her Majesty is rarely wrong in her assessments of character. I also think you have been placed in a difficult position and will need to prove yourself repeatedly to those who doubt. Keth'aran's tone was pragmatic rather than sympathetic. Serve as you did yesterday, focused on duty, unbothered by status or politics, committed to excellence. Do that, and you will succeed. Attempt to leverage your position for personal advantage, and you will discover the obligations far exceed any benefits. I just want to do good work, then you will be fine. Her Majesty values that quality above almost anything else. Keth'aran moved toward the door. One more thing, you will be summoned soon for another meeting with Her Majesty. She prefers to establish clear expectations with those newly bonded to her service. Be honest, be direct, and remember that the bond protects you from consequences of honest speech. After Keth'aran left, Marcus sat in his new quarters, staring at the technical equipment and trying to fully process the magnitude of change in his life. 48 hours ago, he'd been an anonymous contract technician. Now he was bound to the Thyran throne by ancient customs, granted status and access that would have been impossible to achieve through any normal career path, and subject to constraints that meant his autonomy had been permanently compromised. Was it worth it? He honestly didn't know yet, but Keth'aran's words resonated. Serve with competence and integrity, focus on the work, and the position would be sustainable. Marcus could do that. He'd built his entire career on exactly that approach: do excellent work, avoid politics, focus on technical excellence. Now he'd just have to do it while bound to a queen who'd tested him without warning and found him worthy of permanent service. His comm terminal chimed. Message from Royal Scheduling. Her Majesty requests your presence in her private office in 1 hour. Attendance mandatory. Marcus took a breath, composed himself professionally, and prepared for whatever came next. He'd fixed a device and been bound by proximity and ancient custom. Now he'd learn exactly what that bond meant for his future. Marcus arrived at the Queen's private office exactly on time, escorted by a palace guard who seemed more comfortable with his presence than the ones yesterday. Word was apparently spreading that the human was now properly bound and recognized. The office was smaller than he'd expected, more functional workspace than throne room. Technical displays covered one wall, showing real-time data on palace systems and what looked like broader infrastructure across the capital. A desk that somehow managed to look both elegant and practical sat near the window, with seating arranged for conversation rather than formal audience. Queen Serath stood at the window, her back turned, apparently watching something in the palace grounds below. She spoke without turning. "Marcus Webb, thank you for your promptness." "Of course, Your Majesty." She turned then, and Marcus noticed she was wearing less formal attire than during their previous meetings, still clearly royal, but functional rather than ceremonial. She gestured to the seating. "Sit. This conversation requires less formality than our previous interactions." Marcus sat, acutely aware that less formal for Thyran royalty was still considerably more formal than anything he'd experienced in his normal life. "You have had time to understand your new position," Queen Serath said, settling into her own seat. "The bond of keth'aran, the constraints it places on your autonomy, the protections it provides. You have spoken with Kethais, I assume." "Yes, Your Majesty." "He is direct but accurate. His assessment of your situation is correct." She pulled up a display showing what looked like maintenance logs. "You have been on our world 8 months. In that time, you completed 173 repair requests with a success rate of 98%. The 2 failures were due to equipment that was genuinely beyond repair, not errors in your work. Your supervisors consistently noted your focus, efficiency, and professional conduct." Marcus hadn't realized his work was being tracked that closely. "I try to do thorough work." "Yes, that is why I permitted the proximity service situation to develop when the opportunity arose." She dismissed the display, focusing on him directly. "I want to be clear about something, Marcus Webb. The bond we now share was not created through malicious intent or deliberate entrapment. The device malfunction was genuine. The urgency was real. Your assignment to the repair was circumstantial. But you chose to observe closely." "I did, because I had been considering how to properly evaluate you for several weeks before the situation arose." Her tone was matter-of-fact. "Your competence was evident from reports, but competence alone is insufficient for truly sensitive work. I needed to assess character, specifically whether you could maintain focus and integrity when under observation by power. So it was a test. It was an evaluation using circumstances that arose naturally. Had the malfunction not occurred, I would have created a different situation eventually. But the emergency provided ideal conditions." She leaned forward slightly. "You should understand why this matters. The coordinated attack that disabled our systems was sophisticated. It required insider knowledge and access to implementation vulnerabilities that should have been protected. Someone close to the royal household betrayed that trust." Marcus absorbed this. "You're saying the attack was insider-enabled?" "Investigation is ongoing, but preliminary evidence strongly suggests it, which means trust is now more valuable than technical skill, though I require both." Her silver eyes held his. "The keth'aran bond ensures loyalty through cultural weight and witnessed recognition. You cannot betray me without violating customs that carry consequences beyond legal punishment. You would be declaring yourself oathbreaker, which in our culture destroys personal honor completely. I'm not particularly interested in betraying anyone regardless of customs." "I know. That is why the test was worth conducting." She pulled up another display. "Your new duties will include maintaining my personal systems, consulting on technical security for sensitive royal household operations, and serving as independent verification on projects where insider threat is concern. You will also attend certain court functions, where your presence as keth'aran bonded demonstrates that loyalty and competence are valued regardless of species origin." "Political symbolism." "Yes, but not empty symbolism. You genuinely earned the recognition through demonstrated competence and character." She paused. "I will not ask you to be someone you're not, Marcus Webb. Your value lies partly in the fact that you're human, that you bring outside perspective, that you focus on technical reality rather than court politics. Continue to be that person, and you will find this position sustainable." Marcus considered his next words carefully. "May I speak freely, Your Majesty?" "The bond permits it, within reason. I understand I'm bound by customs I didn't fully comprehend until too late. I understand the constraints on my autonomy are permanent. But I need to know, Do you actually value my technical expertise, or am I primarily symbolic? Am I here to do genuine work, or to be displayed as evidence of your enlightened leadership? Queen Serath's expression shifted to something that might have been approval. Honest question, I appreciate that. She stood, moving to the window again. I value your technical expertise immensely. The symbolic aspects are secondary but useful. You are here primarily to do genuine work, with the understanding that some of that work will involve being visible in ways you might find uncomfortable. She turned back to face him. I will also be honest with you. The attack on our systems has created fear within the royal household. Trust is fractured. Those with access to sensitive systems are now viewed with suspicion. You, as an outsider bound by witnessed custom, are one of the few people I can trust with certain critical work, because your loyalty is secured by more than employment contracts. That's a lot of pressure. Yes, but you demonstrated the capacity to work under pressure while I observed closely. I believe you can handle it. She returned to her seat. Over the coming weeks, you will be integrated into royal household operations. You will meet with technical staff, security personnel, and certain court members whose cooperation you'll need. Some will welcome you, others will resent your presence and your access. Navigate that carefully. Any advice on how? Focus on the work. Let your competence speak for you. Don't attempt to play court politics. You lack the cultural background to do so effectively, and attempting it will only make you vulnerable. Her tone was pragmatic. You're not Thyran, don't try to become Thyran. Be human, be competent, be trustworthy. That combination is valuable precisely because it's different from what surrounds me constantly. Marcus nodded, feeling slightly less uncertain about his situation. When do my actual duties begin? Tomorrow. For today, settle into your quarters, familiarize yourself with palace technical systems, review the security documentation I'm having sent to your terminal. She pulled up a final display. One more thing, in 3 weeks, there's a court function where your presence as newly recognized keth'aran bond will be formally acknowledged before the broader aristocracy. It will be elaborate, ceremonial, and politically important. Preparation protocols will be provided. I'm not good at elaborate ceremonies. You'll learn, consider it part of your duties. Her expression might have been sympathetic. The bond grants you protections and access, but it also requires you to participate in traditions that demonstrate the bond's validity. Public recognition is one of those traditions. After the meeting, Marcus returned to his quarters feeling marginally better about his situation, but still overwhelmed by the magnitude of change in his life. He spent the afternoon reviewing technical documentation for royal household systems, far more sophisticated than what he'd worked on previously, with security layers and redundancy systems that reflected genuine concern about threats both external and internal. Evening brought another message, this one from someone identifying themselves as Thesha, a court liaison. Marcus Webb, I will be assisting your integration into royal household operations. We should meet tomorrow to discuss protocols, expectations, and political dynamics you should be aware of. I look forward to working with you. The tone was professional, neutral, giving away nothing about whether this person viewed him favorably or with suspicion. Marcus drafted a polite response confirming availability for the meeting, then sat back and stared at nothing, trying to process everything. He'd repaired a device while the Queen watched closely. That single hour of focused work had triggered ancient customs that bound him to royal service permanently, granted him status he'd never sought, and placed him in the center of court politics he didn't understand. It should have felt like disaster, like losing autonomy and being trapped by circumstances beyond his control. But as he reviewed the technical systems he'd be responsible for, as he absorbed the genuine trust implied by granting him access to sensitive work, as he reflected on the Queen's direct acknowledgement that she valued his competence and character, Marcus realized